you guys know what time it is. It's the end of August, so that means this is going to be my wrap-up video for the month of August. So these are the 6 books, actually, that I ended up reading in August. Starting with Traitor's Blade by Sebastien de Castell, which is book 1 of the Greatcoats series. I read this as part of a read-along with Mike's Book Reviews channel, so that will be linked down below. Please join us if you want a really good book series to read. This book was super quick to read, a lot of fun, lots of action, intense moments. This was a really great book for me, honestly. It's exactly what I want out of fantasy. It's likeness to Three Musketeers and a little bit of grimdark in certain areas, but there's a lot of comedy, a lot of combat hand-to-hand with rapiers. These guys are very versed in duels, so these Greatcoats, as I've said many times in other videos, they're kind of washed up from what they once were. They used to be well-known, well-renowned, and served the king. The king was overthrown by all these dukes that kind of took control of the kingdom and, surrounding areas, and the Greatcoats were kind of disbanded, outcast, and you follow Falcio, Kest, and Brasti, who are the 3 main protagonists of the story, and they get into a lot of shit. They get into a lot of combat. They get on the bad side of quite a few people. It's a lot of fun. The characters are hilarious. Falcio is a great main protagonist, in my opinion. He reminds me, personality-wise, a lot of Harry Dresden, so that was right up my alley because Harry is one of my favorites that I've read so far. Main complaints for this so far, there is a lot of Deus Ex Machina. If that bothers you, it's going to bother you here because it does happen quite a bit. There are a few things that just kind of happen, or, plot conveniences, things like that. It didn't really bother me. I was having so much fun with this book that I didn't care. I was just having a blast, and I blew through it in about 3.5 days. It was a super quick, light read, and I am looking forward to starting Knight's Shadow, which is book 2. On to the second book that I read in the month of August, which is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which of course is book 1 of the Stormlight Archive. All of these I will have reviews up for my channel, so I am not going to go too in-depth on each of these because I am going to have full-blown reviews for all of them, so that will be linked right here. But The Way of Kings was sold to me as essentially the pinnacle of Brandon Sanderson's writing because it is his gigantic epic. These are all 1,000-plus page books, and people really tell me, honestly, unanimously, that this is the greatest fantasy that they've ever read. Now, I did not feel exactly that way. I did feel that it was very good, but like I said in my review, it took me about 40% of the book, so about 400 pages, to actually get going and really feel invested in it, which that's a lot for some people. I could totally see people getting turned off by the very slow burn in the beginning if you're not into that very slow world building, atmospheric setting, bringing, all these introductions in, different characters, some of the chapter breaks and the interludes and the sections that is how this story is set up. I could see that detracting for some people, but Brandon Sanderson is so well known that if you're already on board with his books, you're going to love his writing style. You're already familiar with it. I had just kind of an up and down journey leading into The Way of Kings with Brandon Sanderson, as I mentioned in previous videos, but The Way of Kings overall, very solid book. I enjoy the hell out of the character work. The world building is top notch, and I'm looking forward to Words of Radiance, which I will be reading this month. Next up, I did my sci-fi book of the month, which was Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. And as I mentioned in other videos, we just had our second child, and I read this in a day in the hospital, because what else are you going to do while you're waiting for a kid to be born? So I am appreciative of having that extra time to read, because typically I'm only able to read, a couple hours a day maybe at the most, and I basically had an entire day and a half to just sit down and read this while we were sitting in the hospital, and I mostly enjoyed it. I did mention in my review that I thought a few things were a little bit too slow, because Michael Crichton was such a fantastic mind and intelligent person, being a doctor, being a scientist. He likes to tell you a lot about the science and stuff that he knows. So he is super knowledgeable, and he puts that on the page. Now, that doesn't sound like it would be a negative, but the reason that it was a little bit of a negative for me in this story specifically is this was my first introduction to Michael Crichton, so I'm getting used to his writing style, and he likes to tell you about a lot of science, at least in this book, that doesn't necessarily move the plot forward or even have anything to do with the story itself. So that was my main complaint. But the overall story and premise was very interesting. I did mention in my review that I think this would have made a great adaptation. I have not seen the 1971 film, so I don't know if that's good or not. But as I was reading this, it did kind of feel a little bit more like a screenplay and something to be adapted. So that's probably why 2 years after it was published, it was adapted, because I believe it was 69 and then 71 the movie came out. So while ultimately I didn't love this book, I enjoyed it enough to definitely continue my journey into Crichton's writing. I also have Dragon Teeth, which I think was actually published after his death, so I don't know how good that is. I don't know if... I've heard a lot of people say that Crichton's, pinnacle books in the 70s and 80s before he passed were really just, 10 out of 10, knock it out of the park almost every time. And then the stuff that got published after his passing is lackluster. So Dragon Teeth may or may not be great, but I'm interested in that. And I also have Jurassic Park, which I will be getting to shortly because it's Jurassic Park. It's going to be great. Next up is Nightmare by Chad Nicholas. So I don't have a physical copy. I was given an ARC to review for this book, and I chose to do the ebook just because it was going to be a little bit easier. I didn't want to have him have to send me a physical copy, because I also am going to actually buy the hardcover in October when it comes out, because the hardcover looks fantastic. It's one of those where it does have a slipcover, but it actually has the artwork printed directly on the hardcover as well, which is fantastic. It looks great. It's got the crow on the front, scarecrow on the back. Fantastic thriller. Really got me going on wanting to read more horror and thriller books. This was a great psychological mind F, as I mentioned in my review. A couple of great surprises in this for me, things I didn't see coming. And overall, I just really enjoyed the story. And this being his first works, I think he has a very bright future ahead of him in this genre. And I'm definitely looking forward to reading more as he publishes these books, because, like I said, this was totally unexpected. I didn't expect to get this arc, and I was happy to read it. I read it in a day and a half or so. It was very thrilling and engaging, and I really felt for the main character. And just the things that are going on in this book definitely kept me at the edge of my seat. There were a couple of times, specifically with his family in this book, that kind of creeped me out and made me think twice, as a parent. So very good book. Highly recommend it. Next up is Summer Night by Jim Butcher, which is book 4 of the Dresden Files, which is really becoming one of my favorite series that I've read all year long. I don't know where I would rank it yet, but I know still for me right now, Red Rising and then Mistborn are my 1 and 2. Maybe Wheel of Time at 3, Dresden at 4. We'll see. I'll probably do a tier list at some point, or rank these. I don't know. But Summer Night, my full review will be up on Friday. Again, another solid entry to this series. It was not my favorite. I actually liked Grave Peril more. This is kind of neck and neck with Stormfront for me right now, because I'm one of the few that really, really loved Stormfront. I thought it was a blast. I love Harry Dresden as a character. Like I said, he's probably my main favorite character that I've read all year long. He's hilarious. He makes mistakes. He's not perfect. I love that Jim Butcher has no issues beating the shit out of Harry in all these books. And I love the blend of urban fantasy, that modern day Chicago setting with vampires, werewolves, fairies, demons, ghosts, you name it. It gives you such Supernatural or Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibes. It is fantastic. It's well written. The dialogue is hilarious. The back and forth between these characters is great. The character work is pretty well done. I love most of the side characters. I don't think I've met a character yet that I'm just like, oh, God, not this guy again. I've read a few books this year where there's certain characters that I just roll my eyes at when I see them on a page. I haven't really gotten that with Jim Butcher, and I don't expect to, because I've honestly loved pretty much everything that he's doing with this series. And even while I didn't like this quite as much as Grave Peril, I feel like Grave Peril really stepped it up from Stormfront and Full Moon, and this was kind of just a little bit below it, just because I didn't really vibe with the Fae that much. I just like other supernatural creatures more, but I'm looking forward to absolutely reading this entire series. And every time one of these Orbit published ones goes on sale on Book Depository, I order it, because I'm going to get them all, damn it. And finally, the last book in August that I read, which I absolutely loved, I feel like this book was written for me, was Ready Player One. So this was fantastic. I thought it was hilarious all the way through. The amount of nostalgia just shoved in your face was fantastic. Everything from 80s movies to video games to music. I haven't seen the movie. I have no idea if it's good or not. Let me know in the comments down below. The CGI looked kind of weird, but I would love to see the movie if it's any good. but the book was just so great. Yes, Wade is sort of a Mary Sue kind of character. He does get a lot of things right. He does take a few losses throughout, but you're never really fearing for him. This isn't like a super surprise story to me. I kind of figured a lot of things were going to happen, and then they happened, but it didn't take away from it. I read this in 2 or 3 days. I mean, this is one of those books where like you just keep wanting more because it's just a fun book to read. Just I'm full transparency, gigantic nerd. I've gamed all my life. I love MMOs. I've played almost everything that's been referenced in this book. So many classic games, and just the style that it's written in, just the whole premise of the Oasis being this VR experience, losing yourself, and not even just a game, it's like an entire world. People live whole lives in the Oasis because the real world sucks, and sometimes you just have to escape into a video game, and that is a huge theme throughout this book, that some of these people just, they want to live in the Oasis because their life is not good, and you can really escape, and that helps so many people. I feel like that video games or even books are such an escapism activity that you can kind of forget about whatever troubles are bothering you, things like that, and just lose yourself in the text of a book or, you know, in a video game. So I can definitely see where some of these characters are coming from. Just everything about this world and the setup and the whole hunt for the Easter egg that Halliday planted inside of the Oasis to really like leave his billions of fortune to whoever wins. That whole race to get that was super cool. And again, like the nostalgia bomb that this book is of just like reference. This could be called Nostalgia the Book, but I loved it. It was perfect for me. Hell of a lot of fun. And I'm glad I read it because Ready Player 2 is coming out in 2 months, and I have no idea what to expect from a sequel to this. Honestly, based on the way that this ended, I felt like it was a solid standalone. I got no idea. I don't know if it's going to be like a prequel or if it's going to take place directly after. I don't really know how it's going to work, but I'm looking forward to it. In that packed month of November with Rhythm of War, Fires of Vengeance, and The Burning God, and now Ready Player 2, it's going to be a hell of a month. But that is everything that I read in August. So I read... Is it up here? Here it is. Let me put this guy up here. Those were the 5 on my TBR, and then I got Nightmare, and I read that as well. So those were the 6 books that I read in the month of August. Fantastic month. The lowest rated book, I guess, would be Andromeda Strain, and that wasn't even a bad book, so it was a hell of a month for me. September, I'll link that right here, my September TBR. Got some heavy hitters, big boys in that one, so it'll probably be less books, but who cares? I'm reading some Behemoth series right now, Wheel of Time and Stormlight Archive, trying to get through those. So that's going to wrap it up for me, guys. Hope you all like and subscribe if you do enjoy the content, and please let me know what, you know, some of your best books that you've read recently. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on either anything that I've read or something that you read recently that you absolutely love. If you want to recommend it, go ahead. So just drop in the comments down below and let me know what you think. But until next time, everybody, be great.